Please remember to like and subscribe, and tell your friends about me. And click the bell to be notified when I drop a new video. Recently I was gifted a PlayStation Vita, a console beloved, a console with amazing capabilities, but unfortunately, a console that was almost doomed to fail from release. The Vita has given me a first look at a number of games I never experienced, including the Sly Cooper series originally released for the PS2, and I'm simply fascinated by this device that is bound to go down in gaming history as one of the best, though it's had a rocky, unfulfilling life. This fact got me thinking about other consoles that faced a similar fate. Over the years, many consoles have come and gone, from the Atari 2600 to the Sega Dreamcast to the Xbox 360, but today, we're going to discuss some of the consoles that died young. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday, and I take with me the memories of Sega and the PSP. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. Now let's jump into the first one. Though the PSP overall had a fairly lengthy life cycle, the PSP Go was a revision that lasted a mere 18 months. I've had Marmalade Jelly that's lasted longer than that, goodness. The PSP Go was an all-digital console, which is sure to peeve you if you're like me and love to grow your physical collection. In addition to the PSP games, the console possessed the ability to play PS1 games, and the games could even be played on your TV if you had the cradle. I've never owned one, but I'm strongly considering obtaining one both for collector reasons and to enjoy the many great games that appeared on the console. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, the console is digital only, so I'd probably end up getting a different model that plays physical media. The PSP Go was released on October 1st, 2009 in North America and discontinued on April 20th, 2011, so that Sony could continue focusing on the upcoming Vita. But then they released another iteration of the PSP later that year in PAL regions. Okay, Sony, whatever. Next up, we have the Apple Bandai Pippin. On March 28, 1996, the Apple Bandai Pippin, not to be confused with Scottie Pippen, who was released on the Seattle Supersonics in the NBA Finals just months later, was released in Japan. Just over 5 months later, the console would begin its life in North America for the astronomical amount of $599. Well, it's no wonder its life was so short. Apple must have realized the error of its ways when it pulled the console from the market in 1997. While only about 100,000 systems were manufactured, oh look at that, planning for failure, the lifetime sales of the console amounted to just about 42,000 units, which is still more consoles than I've ever sold, but then again, I don't sell consoles, so that's not saying much. I know, I can't even let them have a pretend compliment, I'm so harsh. I guess the more interesting part of this story is that, even though the Pippin only had 18 games, 1 or 2, depending on how you look at it, of those games was Super Marathon, developed by Bungie. Yes, the Bungie that eventually jumped to Microsoft's original Xbox console, helping the Xbox brand become what it is today. But that, my friends, is a story for another day. In the meantime, prepare to dream. Prepare to relive the days of the Sega Dreamcast. The Dreamcast was released in Japan on November 27, 1998, at a time when Sega was still reeling from the shaky release and weak sales of the Saturn. Though sales of the Dreamcast were initially strong and the console would prove to be a powerhouse with its 128-bit graphics and games like Sonic Adventure, Power Stone, and the 2K series, the console eventually met an early demise. Ahead of its time, the Dreamcast featured a VMU, or Visual Memory Unit, that was used to both play mini-games and enhance the experience of console games. For instance, when playing NFL 2K, one can use the VMU to pick a play without his or her opponent seeing the choice. This was of massive benefit when it came to keeping opponents on their toes. Remember, this was back in the day when local multiplayer was still the main way to play games with others. Though the system was a breath of fresh air for gamers, it sadly succumbed to competition from a bullish rival. A rival known as the PlayStation 2, which was kicking butt and taking names. Unfortunately, the Dreamcast was unable to avoid Sony's foot and ended up being discontinued worldwide on March 31st, 2001. Though gone, the console has not been forgotten. And if you live at my place, it's not even gone. It's right where it belongs, on my shelf with my other consoles. A couple slots over from my PSVR. Speaking of VR, today, virtual reality has overtaken many living rooms, and is possibly on its way to becoming a household name. But the concept isn't new. Before there was Oculus, before PSVR, before the Vive, there was the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was released in Japan on July 21st, 1995. Oh gosh, who was responsible for this eye-damaging monstrosity? Oh, unfortunately the same guy responsible for successes like the Game & Watch, Game Boy, and the D-pad on controllers. In his defense, this device was forced out the door in an unfinished state. You know how production be. Perhaps, if developers had been given more time to refine the design, this pioneering VR device could have been more pleasant to the eye. But honestly, I'm not gonna lie, soon as they said it can't use color, I'm thinking why even try? But for Nintendo, it took months of poor sales before they shared that sentiment, as the console was finally cancelled in Japan on December 22nd, 1995, just 5 months and 1 day after its release. It lasted just a little bit longer overall on the North American market. The whole story behind this console is a bit cloudy to me, but hey guys, I found the silver lining. Even with just 5 months on the market, this thing sold like 728,000 more units than the Apple Pippin in a whole year. I think that says a lot about Nintendo's star power. While there are other consoles which suffered a similar fate, these are a few of the consoles that I found most interesting. Maybe I'll revisit this topic in the future. A couple of the consoles I've mentioned are actually pretty good, so for now, why not give those a go? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this. Why not give this video a thumbs up and share the channel with friends while you're at it? Peace.